Okay, so let's quick start the session. So user termination and access deprovisioning, which we were discussing in the last session. So basically, as I told you, like the very first thing, whenever somebody leaves the organization, the very first thing he does is like his manager or the HR will intimate the IT admin team saying that this particular person has left the organization. So basically, they will raise a request, and based on that particular request, his access would be removed on the last working day or 1 week before the last working day. So whatever the HR policy says, we have to follow this. So basically, all these information you can find in the HR policy. So basically, as I told you earlier as well, we need to go with the design. So whenever an audit is being conducted, we need to first understand what exactly is their design. Once we understand their design, then only we have to check how effectively it is operating at the ground level. So saying that if HR policy says that a particular user's access needs to be deactivated on his last working day, then that is the design, and the effectiveness we need to check by selecting a sample of users, saying that whether all these users have followed the policy or not, whether their access has been removed on the last working day or not. So the very first thing as an auditor, what you need to do is you need to touch base with the control owner or the application owner. So for example, here, since we are connecting with the application owner or a control owner, we are going to ask him the list of users who have been terminated in the last 1 year, or who have resigned or terminated in the last 1 year, or within the audit period which we are conducting the audit for, whether it is for quarterly, half yearly, or for the entire year. Once he gives you the user list, you need to select a sample of users. So whenever somebody gives you the user list, he gives in an Excel sheet. So as an auditor, the very first thing you need to understand that whenever somebody gives in an Excel sheet, it can be manipulated. So you cannot rely on that particular evidence, you cannot rely on that Excel sheet. So the in order to check the completeness and accuracy, as I told you, you need to first understand, you need to ask him, where did you exactly pull this report from? You need to ask this question to the control owner. Then he will say that I have prepared a query. From that particular query, I have pulled out this report. Okay, can you please give me a screenshot of that query? So once he gives you the screenshot, in that screenshot, whatever the filter conditions has put, it should be only the start date and end date. No other filter condition should be there, because when we have asked for a period of only 1 year, the start date and end date should be there. Nothing, no additional conditions should be there, which could manipulate the output of that particular Excel sheet or that particular report that has been generated. So the very first thing we are going to ask is the screenshot of that particular query. Once you get the screenshot, you will also get a output of that report saying that 100 users have been pulled from that particular report. So the Excel sheet, you need to match it up saying that whether there are 100 users in that Excel sheet is not. So this is what you call it as completeness. So an auditors totally depends upon the completeness and accuracy part. The accuracy, how you are going to check it, the number of rows in that particular query, output of that query should match with that Excel sheet. So now you say that this particular report is complete. Now you have to check the accuracy part. Accuracy part in the sense, whatever the details given in that Excel sheet, whether it is accurate or not. So since we are checking the access termination or the access deprovisioning part, few of the fields like when was the last working day of that particular user, when he resigned from the company, all these things are very important fields. So what we do is, as an auditor, we need to focus on those fields. We select a sample of users, and we ask the particular control owner saying that can you please provide me a screenshot of that particular user's details, saying that when his last working day was, when his last when he resigned from that particular company. So what was that particular date? You will select a sample of users and you'll get the screenshot from the control owner. Then you match with that, that is there in the Excel sheet. So in that way, you select the, you ensure that the accuracy part has been also achieved. So since the completeness and accuracy has been achieved, saying that whatever the data given to us is complete and accurate, now you go to the next step, saying that for a sample of users which you have selected, you need to first understand a ticket has been raised or not. A ticket has been raised or not. Then whether his access to the system has been disabled or not. So the very first thing, a manager or a HR should raise a ticket. So whatever the design says, based on that, a ticket needs to be raised. The second thing, his access to the system needs to be disabled. So if this particular point says his active directory listings to verify network access was disabled, then you have to check that whether his access to the system was disabled. So where you get this information from? The IT admin team, because there are the people who will remove access for the users that have left the organization. But your first point of contact would be always a control owner. He is the person who is going to touch base with the IT admin team, and he will get you the screenshot. The third thing, whether the application owner has removed his access for that application or not. So now the system access has been disabled, but there is still 1% chance that somebody might access this application. If it's a web interface, he might access it from outside as well. If his access is not removed, then he might access from outside. So you have to ensure that you remove his application access as well. The last thing is that the ticket has to be raised within 5 business days or as per HR policy. So if at all the HR policy says that his access should be removed on the last working day, then someone would definitely expect that the ticket should be raised accordingly. If if the access needs to be removed on 1 week before the last working day, then as per HR's policy, the request needs to be raised on the 1 week before the last working day. So whatever the HR policy says, we need to follow that. This is all about user access termination. So we will touch base more about the deviation, saying that if we, while testing this particular control, we find that few users have were not removed on their last working day, but has been removed after 1 month of the last working day. So for those kind of cases, we call it as exception. So we will discuss it separately in a separate session. What we are going to do, what are the steps we are going to follow as an auditor, all these things we are going to discuss when we discuss that exceptional handling session. So as of now, we are going to concentrate on the user access termination, user access deprovisioning, which is also called as user access deprovisioning. From an interview point of view, an interviewer will definitely ask you this question: can you please tell me the user termination process? So you need to explain all these things. He might also ask you one thing, saying that where do you check this particular second point from? Whether the HR is going to give you the information, or the IT admin team is going to. So basically, an IT admin is going to give this particular information. One particular interviewer did ask me a question saying, Santosh, can you please tell me, like, how do you know that somebody has logged in into the system after his last working day? How do you come to know? So basically, the control owner will give you information about his last login date. It will be a separate field where someone will give you the last login date of that particular user. So you need to match it up with the last working day, saying that if his last login date is after the last working day, means he has access to the system. So then you might raise an observation saying that why exactly he was having access after his last working day? What was the need? Why his access was not removed? So after that, it's like an exception or an observation. After that, so many questions will come saying that was there any financial impact since he access to the application after his last working day? So did he access any financial applications? He posted any financial statements or financial applications? All these things we will discuss during the exception handling process. So this is what about user access termination or user access deprovisioning. So any questions in the previous session, like creation or deletion, anything if you have, please let me know, or else we are good to move to the next control, which is password settings. Any questions? Okay, so we will move to the next topic, which is password settings. So this is one more control.
Santosh,
Yes.
sorry for interrupt. So I have some question.
Yeah.
So like doubts, like regulatory compliance yesterday, like you told that what is exactly regulatory compliance means?
Regulatory compliance, when did I told this?
Like what we want to achieve by having these controls.
Yeah, see, basically regulatory compliance in the sense, for example, if this particular, if you, while testing this particular control, you have noticed that one of the user was not deactivated on the last working day, but was deactivated after 10 days or after 15 days. Now, when we say that he was not being deactivated on the last working day, means within that last working day and the last 10 days after his last working day, he might have posted some financial transactions as well, because if he belongs to a finance department, his job is to ensure that he posts some financial transactions or something. So now here regulatory, legal, everything will come into picture. So basically, then you have to make sure as an auditor that you get a confirmation from their senior management or IT head, or the head of the department, saying that whatever he has done within that particular period after his last working day, there was no risk to the company or to the organization or to that particular project. So you need to get a confirmation from that. Someone from the higher level should give a surety that nothing has happened. So based on that, you might, as an auditor, try to accept that. But yes, there are definitely those gaps where you have to rectify and see that a permanent solution should be there over it.
Okay. Like, what is the difference between compliance and audit?
See, basically, if you talk about compliance, you say that you check with the design and see whether the effectiveness is there or not. For example, if an HR says that you need to follow a dress code policy during the induction program on the very first working day, so that is as per the design, because as a user or an employee, you have not seen people following it or not, because you have seen only the design over there, because someone is telling you that this is what we follow in the company. But on the second or third working day, when you go on the floor and just see people around and see some of the people wearing casuals on a particular day, then you say that HR told me that Monday to Thursday is formals and Friday is casual, but I've seen some people working wearing casuals also on Thursday. Means policy is there, but the effectiveness is not there. So basically that is called as compliance. When you talk about audit is nothing but you normally see like basically whatever the design says, you have to ensure that whether from a quality perspective, whether through the process perspective, whether you're following that particular compliance or not. So whichever process is there, whether you're following that particular compliance, because every audit has their own set of process. If you see ITGC, it is own set of process. Tomorrow if you go to GDPR, they have its own set of process, because GDPR closely follow with the data privacy, or the data customer privacy, private controls. All this comes into picture. So every audit has their own set of process. So compliance is nothing but you ensure that whatever your process says as per the audit, your that particular company is following it or not. Okay. So now we'll move to the next topic, which is called as password settings. So password settings, you might have seen whenever you join any new organization on the very first day, since you don't have access to the system, somebody will give you access. They will provide you the system name. The IT admin people will provide you will allocate you a desktop or a laptop, and then they will provide you a default username, default password, which will allow you to log in into a system for the very first time. Once you log in, then it will ask you for the confirmation of a new password, and confirm new password. So you will set your own password, where the employee or user will have that liability to set their own new passwords, and you try to enter into the system. But before you enter into the system, whenever you set the password, you will get a list saying that you can only set alphanumeric. It should be, the length should be minimum 5 or 8 characters, and special character should not be used or should be used. So all these conditions are there. So based on those conditions, you will try to set the password. So since nowadays, like since COVID happened, people were following more the multi-factor authentication as well, where they are trying to authenticate through the mobile as well, an extra level of authentication. And then they try to log in into the system. So once you log in into a particular system, again, like once in 3 months you have to change your password. You will get a notification saying that your password expiry is near, so you have to change the password. And again, when you try to change the password, it will not allow you to set the same password that was set last time. So all these settings are there. So basically the IT admin team will do the settings from the backend. If you can see here, that particular screen would look like something like this. If you can see this password settings configuration screen, where from the IT admin will try to set these all password things. Let me show you. So if you can see this, you have this passwords policy. So this is where like the IT admin team, what he will do is he will try to set few things: the minimum age, maximum password age, minimum password length, complexity is enabled or not, password history, 24 passwords remembered. All these things he will configure it, and he will push the policy to all the users that has been created. Based on that, everyone will get that particular option of selecting a new password, length of the characters everyone will get. So basically, whenever we talk about password policy, every organization has only one password policy. There is no two password policies in the organization. So basically, the basic thing here is, even if you have hundreds of projects in a particular organization, that particular project should not follow a separate password policy. Saying that my client is asking me to follow a separate password policy, it should not be the case. Every project in that organization should follow the only one password policy which is set by the organization. So basically IT admin team sits with the senior management, and they will try to see the best combination which would really strengthen the password. Based on that, once it is approved by the senior management, it will be get passed over to the IT admin team, and the IT admin team will try to set that particular configuration for the password policy. So basically one password policy is there for the entire organization. So from an audit point of view, whenever we try to check the password policy, the very first thing you need to check is what is the password policy that is there existing for the organization. So basically you will get a password policy document, you go through it, and then you ask an IT admin team saying that can you please provide me a screenshot similar to this, what you have configured. You match it up with both the things, saying that okay, be these two things are matching or not. And then you go and touch base with an application owner or a control owner, and you will ask, okay, can you please provide me a screenshot of your password policy that has been configured for this application. So once they give you the screenshot, you just need to match it up with the organization password policy, if they are same or not. If they are same, then it is fine. If it is not same, then again we might need to raise an observation, or as an exception we need to highlight that. So basically two things we are going to check here: inspect and validate an established password policy exists for an application, and inspect and validate the password settings for each application should align with the standard policy. So what could be the risks? Securities, intrusion, cyber attack, not easy to guess, data loss, all these are the risks involved in the password settings configuration. So basically these are the two things that we normally check while setting the password, while auditing for the password settings configuration. So any questions in this?
Like what is meant by that intrusion?
See, basically, whenever somebody tries to attack your system, they will basically try to ensure that they will attack using different types of tools. Sometimes they will use a software, like a malware or a spyware, they will develop that script and will try to enter into a system. So basically an intrusion would be like attacking your system, entering into your system and try to attack if at all there are some weakness in your system. Okay, so this is what password settings all about. Now we will move to something called as high privilege access. So basically, high privilege access is nothing but a super user, where which we call it as a super user, and basically we call it as admin user as well, where he has some very special privileges. Special privileges. Just give me a second. Where we basically give special privileges to few people in the team, saying that they have special access, admin level of access, they can edit and everything happen. So basically before discussing this, I'll just give you a small background. So you might have seen that whenever somebody wants to implement something in the production environment, uh, they raise a change request saying that they raise a change request filling all the details like what exactly the change all about, whether they want to restart a particular system, or a restart a particular database server, or making some configuration changes in the database, or making some configuration changes in the router or a switch, whatever it is. So whatever changes they want to make, if it is having some impact on the system, they have to raise a change request. So whenever they raise a change request, they will fill all the details and they will get all the approvals from the stakeholders. It might will also have a plan start date and plan end date as well. And once every stakeholder approves it, then they will implement that particular change on the plan start date and plan end date. So they have to implement that particular change on the plan start date and plan end date only. So it is if at all you implement a particular change outside the plan start date and plan end date, then it is totally considered as an unauthorized change. So and based on that there would be complications on you, or like somebody will might have to take some action on you if if you try to implement any change outside the change request or a change window. So once you get approval from all the stakeholders, there is a separate team called as A2P, which is called as access to production team. So what is their responsibility basically is like A2P, which is called as access to production environment. So basically that particular team will continuously monitor the production environment. They have different kind of tools. They have different kind of tools through which they monitor the entire production environment. So if anyone trying to access the production environment without their approval, what they will do is they will simply send a mail to the change manager, and they will ask that can you please ask this particular person that he has been doing some changes in this particular system for which he has not taken any approval, and he does not have any change request, it seems. Can you please ask him, did he have a valid change request, and if proper approvals has been sought, can you please forward us that particular change request. So once the change manager get hold of that information, he will touch base with that implementer, and he will ask for the change request. And if that particular person is not having the change request, then obviously consequences would be like he would be barred from implementing any changes in the production environment, and in few cases it will lead to his termination as well. So that could be the serious consequences if you try to implement anything outside the change window or without raising any change request. If you want to touch anything in the live environment, then you have to take that permission. Apart from raising a change request, getting approvals, you need to connect with this particular team, because everyone will have access to the router or a switch. Because if someone is a Unix admin, he will have access to the production environment 24 by 7, but he cannot use it as at any given point of time. He have to take a permission from them, this particular team, saying that boss, I have raised a change request, and all the people have approved it, and this is my date and time. For like 2 hours or 3 hours, I'm going to touch this particular server, and I'm going to implement these things in this particular server. So then they will review it and they will provide the approval, and on that particular date and time he will try to make those changes, and once the time is completed he will get out of that live environment. So then this particular team has to review the logs as well, saying that whether he has touched the server A only. If he has requested for server A, he has touched server A only. He has not touched any server which is not part of the change request. So that is the reason we here call it as inspect and determine evidence that access logs are reviewed by a competent reviewer in a timely. Competent reviewer in the sense he should have the right skill set. So whoever is reviewing these logs should have that skill set to review it. So this is all about high privilege access. So uh, mm, so they use different tools. The high privilege access team use different tools to monitor the entire production environment, and if they see anything abnormal, they will highlight it to the right person and they have to take action on it. So here, from a auditor point of view, what are the things you normally have to check here? The very first thing you have to check is inspected HR listing to validate user as an active employee. So the very first thing, you will touch base with the control owner. Here in this case, the control owner or the application owner would be the person who is responsible for this, like the person lead or a manager from this A2P team, access to the production team. It is also called as, I would say, privilege access team as well. In the company, you might have known privilege access monitoring team. It is called as privilege access monitoring team. It is called as PAM team. So you will touch base with this particular team and you will try to get the list which has been implemented recently. Once you see that particular list of changes that have been implemented recently, the very first thing you will see this: whoever has implemented the changes in the production environment, whether he's an active employee or not of the organization. The very first question starts from the very basic, because there might be people who might have implemented and he's not a employee of the organization as well, who knows. But just to cross check, you the very first thing you're going to check is whichever the list has been provided to you, the completeness and accuracy. Obviously you are going to check at any given point of time, every time whenever you see that Excel sheet. Apart from that, you will check this HR listing to validate user is an active employee. Once you see that the user is an active employee, the second thing you are going to ensure that whether his job responsibilities is matching to the change that has been implemented, saying that if someone has implemented a change in the Unix box, whether he's an Unix admin or not, whether his job responsibilities says that he has to touch the Unix box. It is not like that someone from the HR is going to come and touch that Unix box because his job responsibility is an HR, but why he should touch, he or she should touch an Unix box? It's not required at all. So those kind of job responsibilities should match to the access that has been requested. The third thing you are going to check is once that particular person has implemented and left, this particular PAM team should review the logs of each and every change that has been implemented and ensure that logs needs to be reviewed by a competent reviewer in a timely manner to ensure that appropriate change was being implemented. It is not like that someone is trying to say that server A needs to be touched and he touched server B. So it should not be the case. So appropriate access or logs needs to be reviewed by this particular team and ensure that there is no unauthorized thing happened during that particular implementation or change. And the last thing, they are going to check the completeness and accuracy part. Inspect evidence and inquire of management procedure to determine completeness and accuracy of the user listing using the DBA user access review. So basically, whatever they are trying to implement, whether they have the relevant access or not, and also ensure that completeness and accuracy has been followed, wherein you take some screenshots just to ensure that whatever the data has been provided to you is complete and accurate. So all these things you will need to check. So checking the logs by that PAM team is also should be done in a timely manner, because at any given point of time, it should be on a weekly basis or once in a month, where you have to check the logs for the entire month. How many changes have been implemented, you need to check, because this particular PAM team whole responsibility is to ensure that unauthorized access should not get into the live environment. So their only responsibility is to ensure that unauthorized access should not get into the live environment. So basically, I would like to share one small experience of mine. um, I was working into the change management team in my past experience, so where I work closely with the spam team. So wherein like there was one user who has tried to access the production environment, and there was no change request raised, and immediately the spam team has sent an email to us saying that some of this particular employee with this particular name tried to access this production environment on this particular date and time. Can you please check with him whether a change request is there or not? So when I checked with him, there was no change request. So then I asked him like, why exactly you touched the production environment, what exactly was required? So he said that I just entered to check few things, like I wanted to check few of the server logs or something. So that is the reason I checked it. So I was not aware that a change request needs to be raised for these things as well. I said that okay, fine. Then what we did is we informed their manager as well, and subsequently we have to take some action on him. So it was like initially based on the impact we take some actions, since there was no impact over there, but still we have to take some action. So action was like we barred him from raising changes for around 2 or 3 months, and then we asked him to take a training on raising these changes, why exactly these changes required on change management particular. And then once he passed that particular training, we allowed him to raise this particular change request and get it implemented once again. So this kind of actions has been taken. And one another instance was there where like a particular employee was removed from the company as well, wherein like he tried to implement a change in a production environment. So basically, a developer's job is to develop the code, an implementer job is to copy and paste the code that has been developed by the developer into the live environment. So a developer and implementer should be two different people, so it should not be one and the same. So what exactly happened is that the developer developed the code and gave it to the implementer. He copy and paste it into a live environment. He got some errors. At that particular point, the developer was not around. So since that particular implementer has also some development knowledge, he tried to edit that particular code and try to implement it. And because of that, a database, a table was deleted from the backend. And because of that, a severity to incident was raised. But since it was done on these things happen on the weekend, there was no much impact. But they immediately realized that the severity 2 was raised and all these things happened. They immediately realized it and they rectified that mistake by the time it was Monday. But when the senior management came on Monday, they realized all these things happened on the weekend. But still, the action taken was like simply that particular person was removed from the company because his role was to just implement it, but he also played the role of a developer, which was not, he was supposed to do that. And since the developer was not around, he wanted to do by himself since he has some bit of development knowledge. So that was totally taken very seriously and he was removed from the company as well. So this is what about happens if you try to get into some other profile. If at all we are not supposed to do that as per the process. So from an auditor's point of view, coming back to this privilege access monitoring or high privilege access, these are the things that we normally check from an auditor point of view. So whenever these things needs to be checked. From an interior point of view, if at all you feel uh, putting that in your resume, just try to just don't try to put this in your resume, because I would recommend that if at all you want to put something in your resume, it should be access provisioning, deprovisioning, password settings, user access reviews, and then change management and risk assessment. So don't get into high privilege access, then the incident management, BCP, DR, because these controls are such, access provisioning, deprovisioning are the controls are such wherein like even if they ask you something, you'll be able to tell the answer, try to you can manage that. But high privilege access, then the incident management, BCP, DR, if they dig more into detail, then you'll not be able to explain. So that is the reason, just try to rely on the strengths when giving those interviews, but rather than relying on the weaknesses that you have. So this is what about high privilege access. Any questions?
Santosh, one question. Like in organization, they will create one group. In that group, they will involve the team. Like they will add the employee. So, for example, one group is there. There are five members are there. That is high privileged. Like one support team is there. So they will like user will raise the change and they will implement. They will give detailed information. So we need which environment we need to change. We need to we need to deploy these things, this patch and all things. So we'll give an RCA and they will according to that they will change in the environment. So how we will monitor this particular user in that group is what he is doing or what he is not doing?
That is the reason we should not have generic users. Huh? We should have user names. You should not have the generic username saying that, as you told me, that it's a group and in that they are users, and how we are going to monitor which particular person has done what. So that is the reason everyone says that you refrain using some group names over there, because even if you raise a change request, right, you have a change requester name, you have a change implementer name, and you have a developer name as well. So you have to be specifically tell them that who is the person who is going to implement this particular change. Even if you put a group name over there and anyone will from the group will implement that particular, it's not going to happen. You have to specifically tell them which particular user in that group is going to implement the change, because accountability should be there. It's not like someone from the group will implement and tomorrow if something happens, who will be held responsible? So who would be accountable for that? So accountability should be there. So as a change manager, when I was a change manager, we always used to stop some changes based if no implementer name was given. If someone has given a group name, I used to always say that give us an implementer name as well, because normally what happens is that somebody if trying to implement a particular change in the live environment, before that they have a walkthrough call with the developer. The developer, what he will do is he will explain the entire story to that implementer, what he has to do, when he has to do, because few changes have two or three teams working on it, saying that one would be the database team, one would be the Unix team working. So when should the Unix team start their change to implement? When the database should take action. So when the data, whether the first team should be database who would be trying to implement something from the database end, or it would be the Unix team, all these things they will give a walkthrough. The developer will give a walkthrough before the change needs to be implemented. So that is the reason you need to have an accountability for that.
Hi Santosh, this is
Yeah.
Naveen.
Yeah.
Santosh, basically in auditor point of view, so while doing this high privileged access control,
Mhm.
so what we need to check is what we need to check basically on the beginning.
Beginning, the very first thing we need to check is like whether the list that has been given to these are the people who have implemented the changes in the live
That's the
environment.
recent, yeah, okay. I mean the recent privileged access, whoever got the access, we need to check all the list, right?
Yes, all the list, and saying that whether
And with
all
the
of them
proper
are active
approvals.
employees of the organization or not.
Okay, and the access they got through the
Yes.
proper
Yes.
approvals or not,
Yes.
right?
Job responsibilities are not met.
According to their job
Yes.
responsibilities.
And the third thing
Okay,
we
okay,
need to check is whatever they have implemented, those logs are being reviewed by the PAM team on a regular basis or not. So because
okay, okay.
one has to know, right, if I have told them that I am going to touch server A, whether I have
Mhm.
touched the server A or not, and whether I have followed that change window time or not, whether I have if my change window says 2 hours, I have exceeded my
Okay.
change window. So these things
Hmm.
I should catch. The PAM team only responsibility is to catch such things. So they have some tools in place which give them a trigger, but that
Okay.
needs to be monitored, and whether they are doing it or not, we should review it.
Other than the change management, still this high privileged access will come into the act or not?
Yes, yes.
Like,
Other than the change
yes, right.
management, this will, yes, because see, change management responsibility is to just ensure that the documentation, from documentation perspective, everything is fine. Okay. And
Mhm.
second thing,
Okay.
from a risk assessment perspective, saying that if somebody has logged a low risk change, whether that is really a low
Okay.
risk change or a medium risk change, they need to understand, because they will give you the reason saying that why this is a low risk change. If the
Okay.
change manager feels that no, for example, somebody says that I'm just trying to restart my server, so it is a low risk change, but I
Mhm.
question them, you are restarting a particular server, right? There would be some downtime for seconds.
Okay.
So whether
Overall, yeah, I
whether there
think.
would be a, yeah, whether it would
Mhm.
be a fallback or
Okay.
failover, all these things we need to consider.
Okay. So overall, as an auditor point of view, we need to check. So whatever, I mean, for the particular audit period,
Yeah,
so what are all the special access have
yeah,
been approved? So
yeah.
we need to check whether they are according to the job responsibilities or not,
Yes, yes,
like with proper approvals or not,
yes,
and they have reviewed once by PAM team or not, right?
yes, yes. So
Okay.
basically, see, these things you will get a very clear picture. So when initially when you start doing your job as an auditor, the very first thing when you visit this particular team, from a
Mm-hmm.
layman point of view, you ask them, can you please just give me a walkthrough about your project, what you do.
Okay.
So once you get a walkthrough, right, saying that they will
Mm-hmm.
tell that what are their job responsibilities, so what they do,
Okay.
how they monitor it, and they might have some policy and procedure also in place. You go through that policy and procedure as well.
Policy and procedure. Okay.
So you will come to know how they exactly on a day-to-day basis go through their responsibilities. So once you
Mm-hmm.
understand all this design part, right, of what
Yeah.
then you will know like what are the things you normally have to check in terms of
Yeah,
that.
what we need to check. Okay.
Yes,
According to the design, we need to check whether they are working
yes,
effectively or not.
yes, exactly.
And the users or the persons in the company, they're following those rules or not.
Right, exactly. So if at all
Okay.
somebody is trying to deviate what is there in the design, then we should raise an exception.
Exception. Okay.
Yes.
Fine. Okay.
So
Thank you so much.
basically, always try to understand one thing. You might have worked in the technical field, you might have worked in the change management field. For example, I have worked in the technical field, I have worked in the change management field. But as an auditor, whenever I go, I just remove those hats behind and I audit from a layman point of view. I know the concept, I know everything, how these things work, but I will try to put that in front of them only when I listen to them very patiently, saying that each and everything I'll try to listen, and then I'll try to collect evidences as well. And once I get some evidences and some real good proofs, then only I'll try to put my those hats from a change management point of view or a technical point of view, and then I'll try to put in front of them. So normally, in short, if at all I need to tell you, as an auditor, you should not talk to anyone if you don't have enough evidences. So basically, whatever you talk, you should have a support with some evidences with you. Then only you should talk. For example, I'll give you a small instance. So if while testing something, if at all while testing something, I have found users who's where they got some access without some proper approvals. So I will not raise a concern immediately as an auditor. What I'll do is, if for example, I selected 5 users. Out of that 5 users, 2 users were having some issues. Like 2 users got access without approvals. I have seen it. I've tested it. What I'll do is I'll ask. I'll check another 5 10 users, and I'll see whether in that 5 to 10 users which I've selected, whether same issues are occurring in that particular sample set or not. If issues are occurring, then that is a very serious issue, because now I have a proper evidence. Now I'll go to that particular control owner and application owner and I'll tell him, boss, this is what I have observed. And you might know that whenever you go and tell someone that I have found out some issue, the very first thing will say, so out of how many users you found it? Out of 5 users you found two, right? One, that is might be one of case, you don't take it seriously. So that might have happened. But when you say that, no, I have checked another 10 users and I have found around 3 or 4, now you cannot say it is one of user. It is a very serious issue. It's a repeated issue. There is some seriously design problems in it. So can you please check and get back to us and tell us why exactly these things have happened? Can you please provide me a business justification for the same? Now the person will not say a word on it. So as an auditor, you have to be very sure shot. If you're trying to put a blame on someone, you need to have that enough evidences. It's not like I have found one, okay, I am raising a concern now, I have found one. It should not be very immediate. You have to be very much foolproof. Yes, things are not correct, we have to raise a concern now. So you need to have that patience as an auditor. uh, slowly I'll try to put more information like how an auditor should behave and all that stuff, because see, I'll tell you one thing. As an auditor, there were few instances wherein like you will face some challenges as well. For example, whenever you ask for some evidences from the stakeholders, you will not get an immediate response from them. You will not get an immediate response. Just a second.